The Everglades are unforgiving. The sun beats down on you until your skin burns. Mosquitoes rise in clouds that don't break, and every step into the swamp feels like it drags you deeper into something alive. The grass hides alligators. The water hides snakes. Even the air seems heavy, waiting. For a nature blogger, it was supposed to be the perfect backdrop. Her name was Maya Klein. She was 29 years old, sharp, funny, endlessly curious. She had grown a following on YouTube and Instagram, where she posted long-form travel vlogs, survival experiments, and deep dives into overlooked corners of nature. Her audience loved her because she wasn't polished. She was raw. She wasn't afraid to camp alone, to push her limits, to admit when she was scared. In August of last year, she told her viewers she was headed somewhere new, the Florida Everglades. Everyone always tells me, don't go there alone. Don't go past the boardwalks. Don't camp out. But that's the thing. You don't really know a place until you see it without the rails. So I'm going in. Just me, my pack, and the swamp. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. When Maya's channel went dark, her followers noticed immediately. She never went more than a week without posting. At first, they thought she was filming something big, holding back for a dramatic upload. But as days turned to weeks, concern grew. Comment sections filled with questions. Where are you, Maya? Is this part of the adventure? Please tell us you're okay. By September, her family filed a missing person report. The search was brutal. Rangers, airboats, helicopters. They swept the Everglades, but it's a place where you could hide an entire city and never find it again. They found her rental car at a trailhead. They found her campsite, or what was left of it. A torn tarp, a tripod half sunk in the mud. But no sign of Maya. The story hit national news for a week. Female blogger vanishes in Florida swamp. Commentators debated whether she'd been attacked by an alligator, gotten lost, or staged it for attention. Conspiracy channels claimed she'd been abducted. Her family clung to hope, but privately, even investigators admitted it. In that environment, a year without contact meant one thing. She was gone. Then, almost exactly 1 year later, in late August, a fisherman named Reed Walker was running his crab traps near the mangroves. He hauled one up and frowned immediately. It was heavier than usual, but not with crabs. The wire cage rattled strangely, as if something solid was trapped inside. When he set it down and opened the hatch, the smell hit him first. Not the clean, briny stink of old crabs. Something darker, rancid. Inside was a bundle of fabric, tangled tight, mottled with algae. At first, Reed thought it was just trash. Someone had dumped clothes in the water. But when he tugged at it, something slipped out from the folds. Something pale. It was a human hand. The sheriff's office cordoned off the dock within hours. Crime scene tape fluttered in the humid breeze as officers carried out the crab trap, now sealed in a heavy black evidence bag. Fishermen watched from a distance, whispering. Everyone already knew the rumors. The girl who went missing. The one from YouTube. Detectives wouldn't confirm it right away, but the bundle of clothing matched what Maya had last been seen wearing in her final vlog. A sun-bleached khaki shirt and dark hiking pants. The hand was small, feminine. By the next morning, the story had broken again. Body found in Everglades crab trap may belong to missing blogger. What investigators would uncover over the following weeks would unravel everything. Because the hand in the trap wasn't the only thing that had surfaced. Inside the folds of fabric, carefully knotted and bound with nylon rope, there was something else. Something Maya had never mentioned on her channel. Something that shouldn't have been there at all. The body had to be confirmed, of course, even though everyone, family, followers, investigators, already knew. But in cases like this, you can't rely on guesswork. The remains were taken to the Broward County Medical Examiner's office. Forensic anthropologists began the slow process of cleaning, cataloging, and reconstructing what was pulled from the crab trap. The bones were disarticulated, some eroded by the water. Soft tissue was almost entirely gone, except for what had been sealed inside the knotted clothing. The clothes were a match: khaki shirt, hiking pants, even the worn leather belt Maya had been wearing in her last vlog. They found a wristwatch too, digital, waterlogged, but recognizable. Her mother confirmed it instantly. That's hers. She never went anywhere without it. But what stood out wasn't the watch. It was what was found tied to the clothing bundle. The nylon rope was cheap, hardware store quality, but it had been wound in a precise pattern. Not a haphazard knot, but a practiced one. The kind you'd see on boats, not in a camping kit. Around the rope, tucked carefully against the fabric, were two objects wrapped in plastic. One was a laminated map of the Everglades, folded and sealed inside a Ziploc bag. Someone had circled several locations in red marker: remote clearings, waterways far off the tourist trails. The other was a small SD card, also sealed in plastic. Investigators couldn't believe it. If the card had survived the water, it might hold direct evidence of what happened. The lab technicians dried it, powered it, and against all odds, it worked. There were 6 video files. All were time-stamped within the week Maya vanished. The first file opened with her face. She was sitting in her tent, sweat glistening on her skin, hair stuck to her forehead. She smiled at the camera in that unpolished way her audience loved. Day 3 in the swamp. I'm already running low on dry socks. The mosquitoes don't quit, not even at night. But I found this amazing spot, and I think I'm going to stay here a while. Tomorrow, I'm pushing further in. Everyone says it's dangerous, but that's the point, right? The clip ended abruptly. The second file was shakier. She was walking, holding the camera out in front of her. Behind her, the sawgrass stretched endlessly, and in the distance, the low line of cypress trees. I thought I heard something last night. Not animals. Voices. I know it sounds crazy, but out here, you're not supposed to hear people. I'll check it out. She zoomed in on a patch of mangroves. The camera shook, then cut. The third video was at night. The screen showed only blackness at first, then the faint beam of a headlamp. She whispered into the mic, "There's someone out here." In the distance, faintly, another light moved between the trees. Not fireflies, not stars, a flashlight. The video cut again. By the fourth video, her tone had shifted. She wasn't performing for the camera anymore. She was scared. I don't think I'm alone. I tried going back to the trailhead, but it feels like I'm going in circles. My compass. Something's wrong with it. I think someone's following me. She stopped speaking, staring at something behind the camera. Then she shut it off. The fifth file was corrupted, only static. The sixth was the hardest to watch. It showed her running, breathless, the camera bouncing wildly. The light from her headlamp swung across the swamp. Then she dropped the camera. The frame tilted sideways, half submerged in water. For 30 seconds, you could see her boots, hear her voice. "Stop, please!" Then silence. A shadow moved across the lens. A hand reached down, deliberate, covering the camera. The file ended. Investigators sat in silence after watching. It wasn't just evidence. It was a recording of a crime. Someone had been out there with Maya. Someone who didn't want her leaving. And now, a year later, her remains had surfaced in a crab trap, with the SD card deliberately preserved. The case exploded again. News anchors replayed the clips, blurring the most disturbing parts. Commentators debated. Had Maya stumbled across smugglers? A cult? A recluse in the swamp who didn't want to be found? The circled map locations became critical leads. Search teams were deployed to each one. At the first site, nothing, just water and grass. At the second, a small fire pit, long abandoned. But at the third, deep in the mangroves, they found something that changed the direction of the investigation entirely. Half buried in the mud was another camera, not Maya's. a trail cam, and it wasn't pointed at wildlife. It was pointed at her tent. The trail camera was caked in mud, half rotted from humidity, but it was still intact. Rangers sealed it in an evidence bag and rushed it back to the lab. Everyone knew immediately. This was no coincidence. Someone had been watching Maya long before she disappeared. When the SD card from the camera was extracted, the truth came into focus. The card contained hundreds of images, motion-triggered, spanning several nights. The first few showed only the swamp, still water, insect swarms, the occasional alligator sliding past. Then Maya appeared, setting up her tent, cooking over a small stove, adjusting her camera tripod. She had no idea she was being watched. As the days passed, the photos grew more unsettling. One image showed her asleep in the tent, the thin nylon glowing faintly with moonlight. In the foreground, a figure stood barely visible at the edge of the frame. Tall, thin, watching. Another image showed her walking toward the mangroves, backpack strapped on. In the corner, the same figure, closer now, crouched low, almost blending into the brush. The final image was the clearest. It captured Maya kneeling beside her camera, filming herself. Behind her, no more than 20 feet away, the figure stood fully upright. The flash from the trail cam had caught him perfectly. He was wearing camouflage. His face was painted black, and he was smiling. Investigators released none of this to the public at first. Too sensitive, too dangerous. But leaks happen, and within days, the image circulated online. Forums exploded with theories. Some users claimed the figure belonged to a known Everglades hermit, a man rumored to have lived off-grid for decades. Others argued it was part of a smuggling ring, cartels moving contraband through the waterways. But one detail kept surfacing: the smile. Whoever he was, he wasn't surprised to be caught on camera. He wanted to be seen. Detective Elena Vargas, lead on the case, pushed her team hard. She believed Maya hadn't stumbled into random danger. She had been targeted. The circled map points reinforced this. They weren't arbitrary. They formed a pattern, triangulating around one stretch of mangrove-choked swamp near Lostman's River, a place few people went willingly. When officers returned to that area, they found signs they had missed before: a half-submerged dock, rusted but still usable, a shack built from driftwood and corrugated tin, hidden beneath the canopy, and inside the shack, ropes, tarps, empty food tins. Evidence someone had been living there, but no sign of its occupant. The breakthrough came when analysts enhanced the smiling figure from the trail cam. His face paint smeared under the flash, revealing pale skin and sharp features. When they ran it against databases, a partial match came back. Daniel Rourke, a former wildlife officer. He had been fired 8 years earlier for misconduct, harassment, violent outbursts, unauthorized patrols into restricted zones. After that, he dropped off the grid. Some said he lived in the swamp, surviving on whatever he could catch. Others thought he'd left the state entirely. But now, it seemed, he'd been there, all along. Detective Vargas presented the evidence to Maya's parents in a quiet conference room. Her mother clutched the laminated map, knuckles white. So, this man, he hunted her? Vargas didn't answer directly. We believe he was watching her. For how long? We don't know yet. But the evidence suggests he made contact, and that's when things escalated. Her father spoke up, voice low. She wasn't lost. Someone kept her there. Meanwhile, online communities dug deeper. True crime forums unearthed old reports from Rourke's time as an officer, citations for overzealous enforcement, rumors he stalked hikers who strayed off trail. Some claimed he had a fixation on women who explored the backcountry. A chilling theory emerged. Maya wasn't his first. Search teams expanded operations, scouring the mangroves near the shack. On the third day, a diver surfaced, clutching a mud-stained backpack. Inside were several items sealed in waterproof bags: a pocket knife, a compass, and a notebook. Its pages were warped, but legible, written in tight, deliberate handwriting. The first half read like a field journal, notes on tides, animal tracks, weather shifts. But midway through, the entries changed. They weren't about the swamp anymore. They were about her. She moves differently than the others. She notices things. She looks at the water like it's speaking to her. She set her camp in the wrong place. Too close. Easy to watch. Tomorrow I'll test her. The final entry was dated the day Maya vanished. She runs well. But not well enough. Detective Vargas shut the notebook with a snap. It wasn't just evidence. It was a confession. And it suggested one horrifying truth. If Rourke had been writing about the others, Maya wasn't the first victim of the Everglades. The notebook changed everything. It was no longer just a missing person case. It was the trail of a predator who had been using the Everglades as his hunting ground for years. The FBI joined the investigation. Rangers extended search zones deeper into areas considered nearly impossible to navigate. Local law enforcement increased patrols, warning fishermen and boaters to stay away from certain waterways. But one question haunted everyone. How many others were there? The media dug up cold cases, hikers, campers, a pair of kayakers who vanished in 2017, their empty boats found drifting in the marsh, a college student who disappeared while birdwatching near Shark Valley. None had ever been solved. Now, online sleuths compared dates, locations, and the chilling words in the notebook. The others. Had Rourke been documenting them, testing them, hunting them the way he described hunting Maya? Forensic teams returned to the shack near Lostman's River. They searched every inch. Floorboards pried up, walls dismantled. Beneath one section of rotted planks, they found a waterproof case. Inside were several objects. A camera lens, cracked but salvageable. A woman's sandal, size 7. A necklace with a small silver pendant. And another SD card. The card was carefully wrapped in wax paper. When they loaded it at the lab, dozens of photos appeared. Grainy, night vision shots of people camping. Couples, solo hikers, small groups. None of them seemed to know they were being photographed. The last folder contained a set of images labeled with dates. The final one, August 14th, the day Maya disappeared. It showed her tent. Then, her face illuminated by a campfire. Then, a blurred image of her running. And the last frame, her hand reaching toward the camera as if to block it. Detective Vargas stared at the screen. This isn't just stalking. This is collection. Meanwhile, tips poured in. People claimed to have seen Rourke along back roads, fueling up at gas stations, even moving through the swamp at night with no light. None of the sightings could be verified. But one call stood out. A fisherman near Chokoloskee reported finding something snagged on his net. A bundle of bones, tied together with nylon rope. He thought it was animal remains until he saw the jawbone. Human. When forensic experts examined it, they confirmed it didn't belong to Maya. It belonged to another woman. Identity unknown. The press conference was tense. Sheriff Danner stepped up to the podium, sweat beading under the Florida sun. We have reason to believe that the individual responsible for the death of Maya Klein may be connected to multiple disappearances in the Everglades over the last decade. We are working with federal authorities to locate him. In the meantime, we urge the public, do not enter remote areas of the swamp. Not alone. Not without notifying authorities. Reporters shouted questions. How many victims? Was this a serial predator? The sheriff didn't answer. But everyone knew. The Everglades had hidden something far worse than anyone imagined. Late that night, Vargas replayed Maya's 6th video again. The moment the camera tilted, the shadow moving across the lens. It wasn't just the hand that caught her attention this time. In the corner of the frame, for less than a second, she saw it. Another light. Not Maya's headlamp. Not the camera flash. A second flashlight beam, moving from the opposite direction. Which meant something terrifying. Rourke hadn't been alone. The possibility of a second person rewrote the entire case. For months, investigators had pictured Rourke as a lone predator, a hermit surviving on swamp fish and stolen supplies. But the second flashlight beam in Maya's final video suggested something darker. He had help. Detective Vargas called an emergency meeting with the FBI task force. They played the clip over and over, frame by frame. At first, some argued the light could have been Maya's reflection, or lens flare. But digital enhancement confirmed it. Two distinct beams, crossing paths from opposite directions. Maya had been surrounded. The idea of an accomplice raised chilling questions. Who would willingly live like Rourke, off-grid, in the hostile swamp, watching and hunting strangers? And worse, if they worked as a pair, how many others had they trapped the same way? Investigators combed through Rourke's past again, looking for connections. His personnel file revealed a name that hadn't seemed important before. Cole Hensley, another former officer, fired the same year as Rourke. For similar reasons: violence, misconduct, reports of unhealthy obsessions with vulnerable hikers. The two men had trained together, worked patrols together, been reprimanded together. And then, both vanished. Detective Vargas felt the weight settle in her gut. This wasn't a hermit. This wasn't a lone stalker. This was a partnership. Searches intensified around the mangrove shack. Dogs were brought in, drones flown overhead. For days, nothing surfaced. Then a team in an airboat noticed something strange. A section of cattails, flattened into a narrow path, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. They followed the trail for nearly a mile until they reached a cluster of small islands. There, hidden in the brush, was a second shack, larger, reinforced. Inside, the scene was worse than anyone expected. Tarps lined the walls, plastic bins stacked in corners. Inside the bins, belongings, dozens of them, backpacks, phones, jewelry, shoes in different sizes. A GoPro still containing footage from a vanished kayaker in 2019. It was a trophy room. In one corner, investigators found something else. A series of Polaroids clipped to a wire. Each photo showed a different person, caught mid-scream, mid-run, or huddled in fear. At least 12 victims. And Maya was the last one on the line. When news leaked, the nation erupted. Headlines branded the swamp the Everglades killing ground. Podcasts dissected the timeline. Commentators argued over whether the men were killers, cultists, or something even stranger. But Detective Vargas focused on one thing: the notebook entry. Tomorrow, I'll test her. The language wasn't about random violence. It suggested a ritual, a game. And if Maya was tested, then what did passing or failing mean? 2 weeks later, another fisherman made a report. He'd been running his lines at dawn when he noticed movement in the mangroves. At first, he thought it was a panther. Then, he saw a man. Gaunt, barefoot, face streaked with mud. Watching him. When the fisherman shouted, the man disappeared into the trees. The description matched Rourke. But the fisherman swore there was someone else behind him. Taller, carrying a rifle. The swamp wasn't just hiding one predator. It was still hiding both. And they weren't finished. The fisherman's sighting set off the largest coordinated manhunt in the Everglades in decades. Airboats swept the channels. Helicopters scanned with infrared. Dozens of officers pushed into the mangroves on foot, machetes clearing paths where the swamp refused to let them pass. But the Everglades aren't kind to pursuers. Visibility shrinks to feet. Sound carries strangely. A splash could be a frog, or a man slipping just out of reach. After 3 days, the search turned up nothing. No Rourke, no Hensley. Just their absence, heavy and deliberate, like they'd melted into the swamp itself. Detective Vargas knew it wasn't a dead end. Predators like Rourke and Hensley left patterns, and the shack full of trophies had already revealed part of it. Victims weren't random. They were chosen. Isolated travelers, People who ventured alone where no one would hear them scream. So she asked herself the hardest question. If they were still hunting, who would they go after next? Analysts pulled data on permits, boat rentals, wilderness passes. They looked for the same profile: solo adventurers, especially women, who had checked into the swamp in the past month. One name surfaced: Erin Doyle, 24, a wildlife photographer from Vermont. She'd been camping out of a kayak, documenting birds near the mangroves. She hadn't posted to her social media in 5 days. Vargas's chest tightened. They were already too late. A search team was dispatched to Erin's last known GPS ping. They found her kayak wedged against the bank, half filled with water. Her camera bag was inside, but the camera was gone. Nearby, in the mud, they found boot prints. 2 sets, large, male, and next to them, drag marks. The news never made it public. Authorities kept it quiet, hoping to avoid panic. But Vargas saw the writing on the wall. Rourke and Hensley weren't ghosts. They were active. They were escalating. And the Everglades were wide enough to let them play their game again and again. That night, Vargas went back to Maya's SD card. She rewatched every second, listening not just to the images, but to the silences. At the 30-second mark of the 6th video, the one where Maya dropped the camera, she thought she heard something. Faint, almost drowned out by splashing and her own breath. A voice. She looped it, enhanced it, stripped out the background noise. Finally, the words became clear. Run. Not Maya's voice. A man's. Someone had told her to run. The realization cut deep. Maya hadn't just been hunted. She'd been toyed with. 2 days later, divers searching a canal near the trophy shack made another discovery. At the bottom, tangled in roots, was a second crab trap. Inside was another bundle, a human skull, and tucked into its eye socket, another SD card. The skull was cleaned and cataloged at the lab. Forensics estimated it had been submerged for at least 5 years. DNA confirmed it wasn't Maya, and it wasn't Erin Doyle, the missing wildlife photographer. It belonged to Melissa Grant, a 32-year-old kayaker who had vanished in 2018. Her case had long gone cold. Her family had assumed she'd drowned. Now the truth was undeniable. She had been claimed by the swamp's hunters. But the real shock wasn't the skull. It was the SD card wedged inside. When technicians loaded the card, there were only 2 files, both short. The first opened on a clearing in the mangroves. The camera was handheld, shaky, as if filmed by someone stalking just behind their subject. Melissa stumbled into frame. Her clothes were soaked, mud streaked up her arms. She was crying, looking back over her shoulder, whispering, "Please, please, I don't want to do this anymore." A male voice off camera laughed softly. "One more test." Then the video cut. The second file was worse. The footage showed a figure, Melissa, running barefoot through knee-deep water. She tripped, scrambled up, kept going. The camera zoomed in, jerky, like the person holding it could barely contain their excitement. And then, for just a second, another figure appeared on the edge of the frame. Taller, bulkier, holding a rifle. The 2 men were there together. And in the last few seconds, as Melissa disappeared into the swamp, the cameraman turned the lens on himself. Face streaked in camouflage paint. Smiling. Rourke. Detective Vargas watched the clips in silence. Her jaw clenched so hard it hurt. It wasn't just murder. It was a ritual. They weren't satisfied with killing. They wanted the chase, the performance. They wanted trophies, recordings, evidence of the hunt. And the swamp gave them the perfect arena. The FBI pushed the investigation into overdrive. The public was warned, subtly but firmly, to avoid certain zones of the Everglades. More teams were deployed, more airboats, more drones. But Vargas knew they were playing catch-up. Rourke and Hensley didn't just hide in the swamp. They owned it. They knew how to use its labyrinth of water, grass, and trees to appear and vanish like smoke. The only way to catch them would be to outthink them. Vargas spread the map across her desk, the one Maya's body had been bound with. She traced the red-circled sites. They weren't random. They were chosen for access to channels, choke points, blind corners, hunting grounds. Every mark was a place where someone could be herded, cornered, tested. Maya had been one of them. Melissa too. And maybe Aaron Doyle was out there right now, trapped in the same cycle. That night, Vargas couldn't sleep. She played Maya's sixth video again. The sound of splashing, the shadowed hand covering the camera, and that faint voice. Run. It struck her with a new, sickening thought. What if it wasn't just cruelty? What if the test was the point? What if they were letting their victims believe escape was possible, only to prove it wasn't? The next morning, as dawn broke over the Everglades, a new call came in. A tourboat operator had reported hearing screams deep in the mangroves. Not animals, human. By the time deputies reached the area, the sound had stopped. But they found something floating against the reeds. A waterproof camera case. Inside was a memory card, and carved into the plastic, with a knife. The word carved into the camera case sent a shiver through every investigator who saw it. Next, it wasn't just evidence. It was a message, a taunt. Proof that Rourke and Hensley were watching the investigation as closely as the investigators were watching them. Detective Vargas ordered the case rushed to the lab. The SD card inside contained 3 new video files. The first video was static at first. Then the frame cleared. It showed a campfire burning low in the swamp, flames reflecting off the water. The camera was set on a tripod, stable, deliberate. In front of the fire, a woman sat bound at the wrists. Her head was down, hair covering her face. When she looked up, Vargas felt her stomach drop. Aaron Doyle, the missing wildlife photographer. She was alive. Her face was streaked with mud and fear, her eyes wide and unfocused. She whispered something, too faint to catch on the first viewing. When technicians enhanced the audio, her words came through. They said it's not my turn yet. The video cut. The second file was shot during the day. The camera was moving, carried by hand. It tracked Erin as she was forced through the swamp, stumbling, tripping over roots. Behind her, a man's voice barked, "Faster!" The camera panned briefly, catching his face in the reflection of water. Camouflage paint, pale skin beneath. Rourke. Then, it jerked forward again, closing on Erin's back as she pushed through the reeds. The video ended mid-step. The third file was the most disturbing. The camera was placed high, possibly lashed to a tree. It overlooked a clearing of trampled grass and muddy water. Erin stood at one end, still bound, shaking, staring at something off-frame. Then, slowly, a second figure entered the shot. Taller, broader, rifle slung over his shoulder. Cole Hensley. He crouched, staring at Erin. Then he pointed, not at her, but toward the line of trees. And from somewhere out of sight, another voice rang out. "Run!" The video ended. Vargas shut the laptop, fury tightening her chest. They were playing the same game, just like with Maya, just like with Melissa. But this time, they were sending updates in real time. The FBI debated how to handle it. Some agents argued to release the footage, warn the public, turn every eye toward the Everglades. Others insisted secrecy was the only way. They couldn't risk driving the men deeper underground. Vargas had no patience for debate. She traced the background of the second video, the cypress trees, the angle of the sunlight, the depth of water. Combined with maps of the circled hunting grounds, she pinpointed a likely location. A remote hammock of dry ground surrounded by flooded channels. A perfect place for a chase. By dawn, a task force assembled. SWAT teams, rangers, federal agents. Vargas joined them, boarding an airboat under the rising sun. The engines roared as they cut across the water, scattering herons and alligators. But as they neared the site, an uneasy silence fell. The clearing was there, the trampled grass, the signs of struggle. But Aaron Doyle was gone. Instead, nailed to a cypress tree at eye level, they found another waterproof case. Inside, another SD card, and this time, a handwritten note. "You're too slow. She's ours now." The note was short, just 5 words, but they carried the weight of failure. "You're too slow. She's ours now." Detective Vargas felt the sting of it in her bones. Rourke and Hensley weren't just eluding capture. They were orchestrating the chase as much as the murders. They wanted law enforcement to follow breadcrumbs, always one step behind, always too late. And Aaron Doyle's life hung in the balance. The SD card was reviewed that same night. The footage was clearer this time, almost cinematic, as though the men had learned how to frame their hunts for maximum effect. The first clip showed Aaron running again, but something had changed. Her wrists were no longer bound. She stumbled barefoot through shallow water, glancing back in panic. She was free, at least physically. From behind the camera, a voice jeered, "That's it. Show us." The clip ended. The second file was longer. Aaron emerged into a clearing, chest heaving. She looked directly into the lens, whispering, "If someone finds this, please, tell them I fought." The camera tilted slightly, catching the shadow of another man moving closer. Hensley. His rifle glinted in the fading sun. Aaron bolted out of frame. The clip cut to black. The third video was the worst, shot at night, lit by firelight. The camera was fixed on Aaron, huddled against a tree. Her hair clung to her face, her breath ragged. She wasn't tied, but her body language made it clear. She knew escape wasn't possible. From the darkness, 2 voices overlapped, Rourke's low, mocking drawl, and Hensley's deeper, booming commands. Rourke, "Think she'll last longer than the last one?" Hensley, "We'll find out." The fire crackled. Aaron looked up, eyes shining. "Please," she whispered, "why are you doing this?" Silence. Then, almost in unison, the men answered, "Because you came here." The file ended. Detective Vargas slammed her fist against the table. They weren't just killing. They were punishing. In their twisted worldview, anyone who entered their swamp was fair game. The Everglades weren't just hiding them. The Everglades were their hunting preserve. Federal commanders wanted to pull Vargas off the front lines, arguing she was too emotionally invested. But she refused. "You don't understand. They're escalating. Every time they're getting bolder. First Maya, then the skull. Now, Aaron, they're taunting us. If we don't stop them now, they'll do it again and again. And they'll make sure the whole world watches." Her words weren't exaggeration. Online forums were already buzzing with theories about the leaked clips. People debated whether the hunters were militia, cultists, or supernatural swamp spirits. And the killers loved it. 3 days later, a pilot flying over a remote section of the glades spotted something strange. Smoke. Not wildfire smoke. Controlled. A campfire. A tactical team was dispatched. When they arrived, the camp was deserted. Ash still glowed in the fire pit. But nailed to a nearby tree was a Polaroid. It showed Aaron Doyle, standing ankle-deep in water, her arms raised as though bracing to run. On the back, in black marker, a single word was scrawled, "Final." The word on the back of the Polaroid, "Final," hit everyone like a gunshot. For months, the hunters had been playing games. But this word suggested something different, something closing. Whether it meant the end of Aaron Doyle, or the end of the hunt itself, no one could say. Detective Vargas knew only one thing. If they didn't move now, Aaron would vanish into the swamp forever, just like Maya, just like Melissa. The tactical team swept the area where the Polaroid had been left. Fresh boot prints trailed into the waterlogged mangroves. The patterns matched Rourke and Hensley's known gear. A chase began. Airboats roared across the marsh. Drones circled overhead, scanning the cypress canopy. Agents waded chest-deep in muck, weapons raised. The Everglades seemed alive, swallowing sound, distorting distance. But then, gunfire. 3 sharp cracks echoed through the swamp. Agents rushed toward the sound, water splashing around their legs. When they arrived, they found a scene lit by fading sunlight. Erin Doyle, stumbling forward through waist-high water, her face pale, her body trembling. She collapsed into Detective Vargas's arms. Behind her, 2 figures slipped deeper into the trees, Rourke and Hensley. A shot was fired. One of the men staggered, but the swamp swallowed them before agents could close in. Erin was rushed to safety. She was dehydrated, injured, but alive. In the hospital days later, she recounted what she could. She described being hunted in circles, how they fed her scraps, let her drink from stagnant pools, and forced her to keep moving, always moving. How they filmed her exhaustion, her terror, her hope. And how, in the final hours, Rourke had whispered something to her before pushing her into the clearing where the tactical team found her. "Tell them, we're not done." The FBI scoured the swamp for weeks. They found abandoned camps, fire pits, and bones too old to identify. They even found a rusted cage submerged in the marsh, its bars bent, its purpose unmistakable. But they never found Rourke or Hensley. Some agents believed one of them had been killed in that final shootout, the body claimed by the swamp. Others believed both men escaped, vanishing into the wilderness that had hidden them for decades. Detective Vargas never rested easy. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the whisper, "We're not done." A year later, on a humid summer morning, a fisherman pulling crab traps near the mangrove edges hauled up something strange. A waterproof case, lashed with twine, barnacle-encrusted but intact. Inside was a single SD card. On it, a new video. The footage was shaky, filmed in near darkness. The camera panned over cypress knees and black water. A fire flickered in the distance. Then, a face filled the frame. Mud-streaked, grinning, eyes wild. Rourke. "Thought you forgot about us?" he drawled. "Don't worry. We've been busy." The camera tilted, catching a figure behind him. Broad shoulders, familiar rifle. Hensley. They both laughed. And then, the camera swung to the side, revealing a woman bound at the wrists, her eyes wide with terror. A new victim. The screen went black. The Everglades hunt wasn't over. It had only just begun.